Joining me here in the studio now, our political editor, Andrew Clennell. Andrew, let's touch on a couple of the things the Treasurer said there. First up, his meeting, the National Cabinet meets tonight and they're flagging there will be support in terms of rent assistance. We'll get to further discussions on the health front in a moment, but one thing they're not doing is the UK-style wage guarantee.
Yeah.
Do you accept his explanation? Is that fair enough, that explanation about not wanting to change the system?
Look, that's fair enough, but they also don't want to spend the money. It's as simple as that, and they feel they'd have to borrow hundreds of billions to do it. But look, England's doing it, Denmark's doing it, Netherlands is doing it. At some stage they might be forced to do it, and it could mean the difference between 10 and 20% unemployment. It just depends how long this goes for. But look, they'll have to do something more drastic. What they're doing is clearly not enough. You can see that from those Centerlink queues.
The other focus tonight, obviously, I mentioned the rent assistance, but from your understanding, there's a big focus in the National Cabinet squarely on health and particularly boosting the number of ventilators and capacity within the system.
Yes, so the focus that's been put to me of the National Cabinet tonight will be squarely on health, on doing enough to provide ventilators, intensive care beds that are going to be needed to deal with the coronavirus. Now, the New South Wales Cabinet was briefed by New South Wales Chief Medical Officer Kerry Chant yesterday and told about the dire situation the state is facing. There are 818 cases in New South Wales today, up 149, and 411 in Victoria, up 56. Makes that nationwide kind of 1,700. It looks like there's a slight flattening of the curve there, but only very slight, because there were 171 extra cases in New South Wales yesterday, 149 today. And in Victoria, you've got 56 cases, extra cases now, and yesterday there were 59 extra, but they need extra flattening, more to occur. Every other day it's been accelerating 20% more each day. And look, the Ruby Princess fiasco really hasn't helped. 133 cases there, terrible situation. Now, what ministers in New South Wales were told by the Chief Medical Officer, Kerry Chant, was that a person with COVID-19 is on average infecting 2.86 people a day, 2.86. They then infect 2.86, who then infect 2.86. If that keeps going, we'll have 25,000 cases in New South Wales at the end of the month. Think about that. Now, the ministers were told that there are 700 intensive care beds in New South Wales and 500 extra being stood up. If COVID-19 hits 20% of the population, there'll be a need for 10,000 ICU beds in New South Wales over the year. If it hits 60%, 30,000. If you want to know why the pubs, stadiums, restaurants, cafes and everything else is shut, that's why. It's losing jobs to save lives. And it seems we are headed through several stages to a British-style lockdown. Not straight away, but eventually. I put that to Health Minister Greg Hunt at a press conference earlier this afternoon. We're at stage 1. He said a stage 2 is not a full lockdown, but he is encouraging all people to stay at home if they can. Let's have a listen.
Is it inevitable that more businesses will have to temporarily shut down and that there will, in effect, be a lockdown in this country, like in Britain, where people are basically ordered to stay at home except for essential services?
Sure. So I won't preempt, and I'm not for any other reason that I think it's entirely appropriate that the health professionals, because they have guided our actions, which have meant that we have been able to prevent the onset and the spread in Australia far longer than many others, that I will allow them to do their work. We have always indicated, as the Prime Minister said and the National Cabinet said, that this was stage 1. It is not the last stage.
What could stage 2 potentially involve, and is lockdown later than stage 2?
So stage 2, I will respectfully leave that to the medical expert panel, which is working on that. But there are a series of gradations here, which is about progressive social isolation, where we believe that is required. But above all else, people don't need to wait.
So that's the Health Minister there. We spoke, and you touched on a slight levelling out of the numbers. Let's hope that continues, because we want to talk about positives as well, where we can find them in a difficult situation.
Pretty grim at the moment, isn't it?
It is grim, but I think there is another positive we should touch on, and you asked the Health Minister about it in terms of not just vaccine, because vaccine is obviously a 12 to 18-month proposition from most experts' assessments. We're talking here about antivirals, drugs that can be delivered soon and hopefully reduce the mortality rate of this thing.
And this gives us a chance of getting out of this thing, of getting to the other side. Look, it's a long way off, but he was talking about new developments today. I think it's probably best just to listen to what Greg Hunt says about this.
We have joined with the Queensland Government in supporting that. In addition, there have been philanthropic contributions. They are doing a wide expansion of the clinical trial, and there's both an HIV drug and a hexachloroquine, which is being considered as part of it. Then there are new proposals which have come to us today, which have been brought forward by the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute, one of the great medical research institutes, not just in Australia but in the world, a storied home of Nobel laureates. And that institute is looking at the potential for prophylaxis or preventive deployment. And we are considering that immediately, and I am hopeful that within the next 48 hours that they will have provided a strong case, but I am very predisposed to accept that.
Yeah, so that from one of the eminent institutes in Melbourne, progress there that he has been notified today in terms of the rolling out of those antiviral drugs. The other UQ, and he spoke about philanthropists, one of them is Clive Palmer.
Can you believe that?
Clive Palmer spending tens of millions in fast-tracking the manufacture of that. So when those tests are done, they're ready to roll out millions of those tablets. I'm going to be talking to Clive Palmer later in the program, actually, just after 4 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, about that initiative. He's got to be praised for that. But I want to get your thoughts as well on this language from Gladys Berejiklian today. What do you make of it? Because she's saying she makes no apologies for her approach right now.
Yeah, well, the Ruby Princess freaked New South Wales out, and they're moving, and we're going to have to move down this direction anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised to see stage 2 tomorrow. That's a matter for Scott Morrison and the Premiers. But let's hear first from Gladys Berejiklian about why she feels we have to move on shutdowns now, and then the Victorian Health Minister, Jenny Mikakos, on how she's saying thousands of lives could be lost in a worst-case scenario here. Let's have a listen.
We can tell from our numbers, and they're going up quite significantly every day, but many countries did not take some of the actions this early on in the process in order to control the spread. And I don't want to be another example of a jurisdiction that didn't do what it needed to do at the right time.
We are looking at many thousands of lives lost. I'm not saying that to scare the community. This is modelling, but modelling is projections. It is no set destiny here. It is in all of our hands. We can all work together to reduce the number of deaths.
That's the Victorian Health Minister. Now, let's we obviously turn our attention to one of the stuff-ups. And the thing is, in this situation, obviously there's going to be hiccups. It's not an easy thing for government to respond to, and I certainly have a lot of sympathy for the Prime Minister and Premiers at this time. It's not easy. But when stuff-ups happen, people should admit it and be upfront about it, shouldn't they?
They should apologise, and Stuart Roberts should apologise and not just say, my bad. It's a frightful cock-up, this, by Government Minister. Government Services Minister Stuart Roberts told people the Centerlink site crashed yesterday from some sort of hack. It wasn't. It was because so many people were on it. He's had to admit that was wrong information, has not properly apologised. Let's hear what he said yesterday, first of all, and now today about this on radio this morning.
Unfortunately, this morning we also suffered a distributed denial of service attack on our main channels, which also highlights that other threats still abound.
So are you saying it suffered a cyber attack?
We suffered a significant distributed denial of service attack this morning.
Coming from where?
We don't attribute in terms of where attacks come from. This combined with all of the data that the 98 or 95,000 users gave rise to a very strained performance because of the high number of usage, and that caused the outage. The DDoS alarms show no evidence of a specific attack today.
We normally get about 6,000 concurrent users. We've prepared over the weekend for 55,000, so a 1,000% increase. I didn't think I'd have to prepare for 100,000 concurrent users. Again, my bad, not realising that the sheer scale of the decision on Sunday night by the national leaders that literally saw hundreds and hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million people unemployed overnight.
Well, I hope Stuart Robert gets better, because he's got a very important job to do at the moment with all these people, from Centerlink basically unemployed. If we can have a look at those queues again of people, if we have that footage, I want to show people how many, what's happening at the moment. All these Centerlink sites. I'm told there's a third economic package coming. I certainly hope that's the case, and I hope it's soon. Now, Stuart Robert basically has done a disservice by the entire cabinet by his loose language. Today he made it worse by telling people you can get a customer reference number online when you have to call. Another error. And then you heard him there say that it could have been 1 million unemployed overnight. It's not 1 million, I'm told, it's hundreds of thousands. These things actually matter in this situation. This minister needs to improve his performance, Kieran.
Andrew Clennell, we'll talk to you next hour. Thanks for that.